There we go. Welcome to fourth quarter, guys.
Scary. Ooh, we're almost halfway through.
High school.
I have a question.
Junior year fast.
So is the week that we're off, like spring break or whatever, is that still like part of the fourth quarter? It's just we don't have any classes.
Yeah, pretty much.
I was thinking, see, I was getting confused because I was thinking that the fourth quarter started after we got back from spring break, but it doesn't.
That is so scary. We only have 2 years. We're gonna be in college.
I don't want
College.
6 years from now, hopefully, you'll be graduated from college.
Or we'll be like. Hopefully, yes.
Or we could have to go through 8 years because of our.
Or the world will be over.
That seems unlikely.
Yeah, I know. I know. One day it'll just. What happened to like that one time when we were all supposed to die?
I mean, the thousands of times people have been predicting since, forever.
Yeah. They were like December 21st, 2012.
Yeah, we were supposed to die in 2012.
Yeah.
And
Who knows
2001.
if we're dead or not? I'm dead. Cody 2012. Do not break that.
Hmm?
Didn't that guy go crazy like he kind of naked on the street or something?
No.
I swear to God. Talking about that guy who made the Coney video.
Oh, him, maybe. I
Oh,
don't know. I said, yeah, him. I was like, no. Not that I'm aware of.
Well, you made that very, like, unclear.
That guy,
I thought it was like a really like young man. Okay, I'm still confused as to what that is. Yeah.
Child soldiers is most of what it's about.
I feel like we talked
You
about
basically
that.
kidnap kids, brainwash them, and have them kill each other.
Yeah.
What?
It's pretty straightforward.
Have you ever seen movies like that?
Didn't we talk about
We
that?
talked about
last
that in
week?
geography!
Yeah, I knew we talked about it last
Not
year.
specifically about Coney, but just in general. With the, if nothing else, the blood diamonds.
The blood diamond was.
Wait, isn't Leonardo DiCaprio on that movie?
That's the movie, yeah. It actually does a pretty good job of explaining the situation.
Oh, I know.
Is it good, the movie? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I want to see it.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
Yeah. Blood diamond.
Yeah, I can't recommend it because it's rated R, but yeah.
How old is the movie?
I thought it was.
I think almost 3 hours. Isn't that about right?
Avatar was 3 hours.
That's not bad.
Yeah, Avatar. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
that's so long.
Sit through that movie forever.
Yeah, Avatar.
It's change.
Why is Leonardo DiCaprio always in like 4 hour long movies? Titanic.
Titanic's like 3.5 hours.
I'm not
Anyways.
really a fan of that movie.
I
We're
love
talking
that
Mexico
movie.
today, guys.
Oh.
Now, first of all, let me kind of run something down for you. What's our relationship like with Mexico?
Bad. Maybe.
Well, we're allies, aren't we?
Yeah, I know it's kind of. I like to call it like a frenemies.
Yeah.
You know, we have some positive things. We have some negative things. You know, we've got NAFTA. That's good. We have this issue with the illegal immigration and the drug cartels. It's bad. But generally, I think there's a lot of contempt in the United States for Mexico. Just kind of sad. I mean, yes, as a country, they've got some issues, but they're not like, this impoverished hovel I think a lot of people have in mind. I mean, they've got one of the best universities in the world. You know what I'm saying? La Universidad de Mexico. The University of Mexico.
Maybe the University of America.
No.
Oh.
We don't, I mean, we've got so many of them here, there, everywhere, University of Columbia, we've got U of L, UK, they're all over the place, But anyhow, my point is that, where does this relationship come from? Like most things, from history. We share a border with Mexico. And the thing is for quite a long time, we weren't really concerned with that far west. We were concentrated in the east. With Manifest Destiny pushing us west, however, we come in contact with Mexico. Now, adding to this is that much of northern Mexico, which includes modern-day Texas, was more or less unsettled. So in order to encourage settlers, the Mexican government said, hey, anybody who wants free land, come and get it. You just have to agree to become a citizen of Mexico and follow our laws. So a bunch of Americans went down there and did that. Eventually, there were some disagreements with how things were going to be run. You can look up more info if you want to. I'm just kind of leaving it at that. There were disagreements. And so those in Texas decided we're going to form our own nation. We're going to form the Republic of Texas. So they ceded. They formed their own nation. This, of course, called the Mexican Army on them, because this was a revolution. And this great battle was joined. Actually, there's several battles. The one that kind of sticks in everybody's mind is the Alamo. Which, do you guys know anything about the Alamo? Crash course in it, it was a Spanish mission. Spanish missions were built to be like fortresses, so naturally it was the best area to defend yourself. However, the best option was actually to run away. They just couldn't. They had to stay somewhere. They had to fight, and so they chose the Alamo because it was the best defensible position. However, they were horribly outnumbered by the Mexican army. Despite that, they held on for a lot longer than was anticipated, but eventually they were slaughtered to a man, and the Alamo fell. What this did is it acted as a rallying cry, not only for the Texans, but also the Americans, because we said, hey, these are Americans dying, you know, technically they're Mexicans now. So we sent our army in to go basically help Texas become its own independent republic. Eventually, years later, the Republic of Texas asked to be part of the United States, and it became a state. Well, this angered the Mexican government because they saw it as basically us taking over Mexican territory, so they sent an army to invade. We responded with our own army. 2 years later, we defeat Mexico, and we signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which added the territory of not only Texas, but stretching all across to California to the United States. So that's when all that territory became the U.S. We sometimes forget that fact that, hey, that was all Mexico. So there's a significant number of Mexican-speaking individuals there, and yes, Mexican as in the Mexican form of Spanish, that, you know, culturally are Mexican. That's where like you have this food choice of like Tex-Mex. It's really not Mexican, it's really more American, you know. But all sorts of different types of things from that. So basically our relationship is going to be some animosity, but also some cooperation. By the way, some names here. Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. He was the military general who defeated the Americans at the Alamo, was also later defeated in the Spanish-American War. He's also an important figure in history because he ended up defeating the French, he defeated the Spanish, and became president of Mexico 4 different times. In fact, he was a military dictator, let's be honest, but he was a popular one to some extent. And frankly, Santa Anna is kind of this classic Mexican leader. He was a Creole, so he was a high-standing member of society. They had got rid of the Peninsulares after the Revolution. And he used his authority and his also strength in the military to control Mexico. Eventually, he is defeated in the election and basically sent into exile. Eventually, he made his way back into Mexico, but he was essentially penniless. Ended up dying more or less in obscurity. Benito Juarez was a reformer who's a particular note because he really climbed the social ladder. He was a mestizo, and he ended up rising above his station to become a lawyer through his own personal initiative, where he ended up serving basically those who couldn't afford lawyers. Usually this meant the poor. And he saw a lot of the problem in poverty that stemmed in Mexico really stemmed from land issues. The land was not fairly distributed. The land was more or less controlled by the same elite class who'd been controlling it for centuries. And so one of his big pushes when he eventually becomes the president and he starts his political career is La Reforma, which is the idea of fairly distributing the land and making more opportunities for the lower classes. And this, of course, was hugely popular, except with those who had lands. So he ends up making his fair share of enemies. And after his death, La Reforma dies with him, at least temporarily, because Porfirio Diaz was not interested in that. He was a military dictator through and through. He basically operated through the carrot and stick mentality. You guys know what carrot and stick mentality is? Or using a carrot and stick? Basically, here's what it comes down to. It's about motivation. If you want somebody to do something, like say, you're working with a kid, you want them to do chores, you want them to clean your room. How do you get them to clean their room? Yeah, pay them allowance. It's $5 for rooms clean. I'll walk in there. Okay, that's the carrot. What's the other option? Yeah, what's that? Punishment.
Yeah.
You'll be grounded if it's dirty. If you do both, that's 2 incentives. The way he worked it was this. If you played ball with him, if you went along with whatever policies he wanted, he would reward you with positions in the government or land or any types of other duties. If, however, you stood against him, he would have you publicly beaten or arrested or beaten in prison or all kinds of different things. He called it the bread or the club, but it's the same mentality. So he was through and through a dictator. Was that a bad thing for Mexico? It's questionable. Because even though he was a dictator, there was order. And under him, Mexico's economy grew, things were generally better, and there was a revolution, which is good. But not so much on the freedom aspect. That's Santa Anna. Interestingly enough, if you look at a lot of his younger portraits, like when he was a younger guy, his portraits tend to have him in his military regalia, things like that. Later on, when he's a politician, he's in suits and this. So, that's the Alamo. Interestingly enough, I just recently saw an article where they were talking about the state of the Alamo, and basically it's not good. It's falling apart. I mean, climate-wise, where it is, it's pretty rough on old buildings. And the fact is that to keep it maintained is hugely expensive. And the fact is a lot of Americans aren't really interested in all this stuff. I mean, we are to some extent, but at the same token, how many historic homes are there out there that are just falling apart, that have just been destroyed, or are in a state of disrepair? I mean, think about how many people think of Pres, oh yeah, that building's old. You know what I mean?
Gorgeous.
All right, it's that character.
Charm.
It's going to last because it was built well. I'm just saying that, just because something is old doesn't make it bad. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, we do have very much a throwaway society, if you think about it. I mean, how long should a car last? The general methodology, if you look at most people, they go in 10-year cycles. After 10 years, they get rid of their car and get a new one. My father-in-law is driving a car that's 25 years old. Because he's like, it works, why would I replace it? But it's like, you can't have a cool car. It's the kind of funny thing about it. It's like, who cares? It works, But we do. Anyways, Francisco Madero, Victoriano Huerta, and this Carranza, I can't pronounce his name. Venestania? But let's just do it this way. Madero, Huerta, and Carranza are 3 dictators that end up controlling Mexico basically from the second half of the 19th century. Now, Madero is eventually going to be assassinated. The reason being is he was kind of moderate in a way. Like he was liberal to some extent. But he ended up not doing enough. Like the conservative side is too liberal, liberal side is too conservative. He realized he couldn't hang out power, so he stepped down. He was assassinated by Huerta, and when Huerta was defeated by Carranza. And under Huerta and Carranza's regimes, we had the emergence of 2 distinct revolutionaries, Pancho Villa and Emiliano Zapata. Have you guys ever heard of Pancho Villa before? All right, most of the time we see in pictures and things like that, you see this guy in a sombrero with 2 bandoliers of ammunition and guns on his hips. He's sort of the Western version of Robin Hood. Like, he's literally like a real-life Robin Hood. What he would do is he would go and take land from the landowners and give it to the peasants. He literally robbed from the rich and gave to the poor, which of course made him hugely popular with the impoverished peoples. And his aim was to try to end the oppression of the dictators in Mexico. The same thing happened with Zapata while he was in the South. And at different times they did work together. But for the most part, they were more or less concerned with their own things. Like, for instance, at one point, Pancho Villa ends up siding with the Mexican government while Zapata is still fighting against the Mexican government. That was under the reign of Huerta. In fact, under Huerta, the U.S. ended up gaining control of parts of Mexico to use as a naval base. And, Zapata did not like that at all. And Villa basically was kind of shrugged and said, well, it's really hurting the dictator, so what do we care? And so they basically had different aims. Both ended up being assassinated, although different times in their careers. For instance, Zapata was actually in the process of trying to raise a revolution.
For the interruption of Rebecca Muir, come to the large conference room, Ellen Denham, and Maddie McCubbins, please.
Against the raise a revolution against the government, and specifically he was trying to encourage the defection of this general. What he didn't know, though, was that general had already fallen out of favor, and so his superiors got a hold of this message and said, look, if you want to kind of redeem yourself, you play along like you're going to defect, and we'll lure him into an ambush, and that's exactly what he did. Villa, on the other hand, he ended up, after this long career of fighting revolutions, he was granted some territory by the Mexican government, something like 50,000 acres, 5,000 acres, something like that, of land that he and his followers basically settled on and kind of formed their own little compound. And from there, he only ever left that compound with a bunch of people as sort of bodyguards. Well, apparently somebody set him up and ended up having these guys with rifles basically blowing him away in his car. And to this day, no one's 100% sure what happened. There's actually two theories. One of which is that this guy who he killed in the various revolutions was a son of one of these very powerful families in Mexico, and they were getting revenge on him. The other, and frankly more likely, case is that he was actually, a hit was called in on him by the Mexican government, because he was thinking about becoming president. He was thinking about running, and with as popular as he was, he would have become president. And so this was seen as a threat, and so they annihilated him. The reason that's most likely is the guy who was held responsible for the assassination was sentenced to 50 years in prison. He actually only served like 1 year or 7 months or something like that. And then after that, he was given a position in the military that was really kind of cushy and really well paying. So odds are good that it was the government lieutenant.
Will those girls who are working with Miss Mercer and have a role in today's event, please go to the gym right now. Thank you.
So to finish up, the end result of this was that Pancho Villa remains a hero to this day in terms of modern Mexican history. He actually is somewhat not remembered as a hero by the U.S. Because remember how I was saying that the U.S. was supplying him weapons and what have you? Well, eventually the U.S. government decided that backing revolutionaries wasn't creating a stable Mexico. So basically we should support one of the dictators. So we did. We ended up supporting Bronzo. Well, Pancho Villa saw this as a huge betrayal and ended up turning against the U.S. and ended up holding up various trains that were controlled by U.S. businesses and ended up killing something like 30 Americans. This angered American people so much that we actually sent an army after him that never caught him. We did end up killing something like 130 of his men, including his right-hand man. We never actually got him. So to this day, like in America, in the United States, Pancho Villa is kind of like this. On one hand, he's a good guy, on the other hand, he's a bad guy. So we're not really sure how to think about him. But in Mexico, he's absolutely a hero. Here's a statue, actually, of him in Chihuahua. and again, kind of this heroic figure type thing. Again, very Western. So, the Texas Revolt we talked about in Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, that ended the war and gave U.S. territory to California and Texas. La Reforma was the policy of the 1830s and 40s of Juarez. And then in 1862, the French invasion. Now, do you guys remember Napoleon III? He was the nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte, of course, you guys know, conquered Europe. He was this big, important figure in history. Napoleon III eventually became Emperor of France, and he was trying to prove that he was every bit as much as a leader as his uncle was. Furthermore, he wanted to establish France as a major power. So, in 1862, France invaded Mexico, and actually ended up succeeding in adding it as part of the French territory. Now, of course, the revolution against this, Santa Anna ended up eventually defeating the French. But another thing is the French pulled out because it was too expensive. They actually weren't gaining anything out of this, and they were right about to fight another unsuccessful war with Germany. Things just kind of were not going France's way. And of course, the U.S. had nothing to say about this because we were busy gearing up for the American Civil War. So this is really before Roosevelt enforced the Monroe Doctrine. So the situation is pretty fluid. We'll say that. That's it, guys.
I guess we're out of turn.
Yep.